Briahna Joy Gray, when it comes to being the left representative for establishment types to attack, Briahna Joy Gray is like one of the main faces for those attacks. You see a lot of people in the establishment sort of go after her. There being a lot of establishment people. I forget the guy named Joe. I forget his last name, but he was on there one time and went on the interview. Everything was fine. But then the next day she tweeted about the episode, just tweeted a clip, and then he got completely demolished. And then there was a whole falling out in public over what happened. But that was just another establishment person sort of calling her out because she is a representative of the Bernie flank that decided to go further left. But because of that, oops, I thought I already had it up. But because of that, she is a target. And this is one of those ratios where you don't really get satisfaction. I can't assume that he gets satisfaction of this ratio because of what the ratio is about. And let me go to what I mean here. Here is, his name is Elie Mystal, or Elie Mystal. I think that's how you say his name. But it's a guy he is on The View a lot. He's on MSNBC a lot. I'm sure you've seen him in a clip. He's the black guy with the salt and pepper fro. That's Elie. He's a famous guy. He's a guy who went viral for saying the Constitution was trash on The View. I hope I'm giving you enough tidbits to know for you to jog your memory on who this person is. But there was a tweet going around in support. It's a solidarity sort of tweet where people would say something like what Bree says here. Let me blow it up a little bit. She says, I'm not Palestinian, but I do have morals and will not be voting for a genocide enabler. Now, this was a quote tweet. It's been since deleted, but a quote tweet said the same thing. So people would quote tweet and just repeat what that quote tweet says. I'm not Palestinian, but I do have morals and will not be voting for a genocide enabler. Now, this triggered, needless to say, a lot of establishment people. Now, Bree got 6,500 likes on that, which is a pretty decent number, and you don't typically see ratios above this, meaning someone who will come in and say something about this and then she gets ratio, and especially when it's pro-genocide Joe. But when you're part of the establishment and you got other establishment types that will retweet you, it's possible. And that's what happens here with Elie Mystal. He says in response to Bree this: okay, abortion bans for everybody, I guess. I too would like purity tests, and I'm going to defend the administration. But when the Christo-fascists take over and give embryos more rights than people, I want to be able to say that I did what I could to stop the Christian fascists. Well, why can't Bree say I did what I could to stop the genocide enabler? Couldn't she say that? Now, he actually ratios her on this tweet, which is astonishing to me. But again, this is an establishment guy, and the more establishment people saw this, and any attack on this person who went awry, because that's how Bree's looked at by these people, by other Harvard people. There are Harvard people who was with the establishment, and they're mad that there's a Harvard person, a person with a Harvard degree, who went to the dark side, according to them. And there's more reaction. So you see him react there. There's more that he says. He says a lot of dumb stuff. Now, let me go down. Now, Bree says this. She also gets ratioed here, believe it or not, by a guy who claims to be Palestinian. But this is an Americanized Palestinian. He says, I'm Palestinian. Trump is worse on Israel than Biden. If you don't vote for Biden, you're voting for genocide. Now, just take a step back on this. This guy who has like 2,000 followers ratios Briahna. Of course, there's a lot of establishment types that prop him up in his tweet. There's a bunch of people, famous people, who retweets this, and there's a reason why it happens. Because anytime you can point out a coon, this would be like a black person's coming out and saying Trump is more racist than Joe Biden. A coon comes out, say only a coon would say that. And I would imagine Palestinians have coons too. Because I don't know too many Palestinians who have family members who are dying who would say that Biden is better than Trump, who is not in office, who's not facilitating. You can say all you want that he has the same ideology. What you can't say is he is physically participating in a genocide. So for a quote unquote Palestinian, a so-called Palestinian, to come on and make that point that a hypothetical genocider is worse than a current person who's facilitating actual genocide is absurd. But apparently there is some sellout Palestinians who have this point of view as this person here. But anyway, that's not the point. Here is Elie in a couple of different videos here I wanted to show you. Just so you know who he is. I'm sure you've seen him before. Here is Elie Mystal. I think that's how you say his name.
You've been tweeting.
Just so you can remember who he is. This Twitter is acting up. I clicked on the video and it takes me somewhere else here. So this is so crazy how they do the video.
What's happening this week? I said, I cannot wait to have Elie with me on the show this Saturday. You've been tweeting passionately about the Roe decision since yesterday. You pointed out that Biden called out Congress to codify abortion, but you say there are things the federal government can do right now to protect these rights as well. And I think everyone wants to hear from you. What exactly can they do? What should they be doing?
Okay, so there's the first thing out of the box from the Biden administration needs to be providing abortion services at federal facilities, right? We can do this by leasing the federal facilities to people willing to provide abortions out of their own pocket. That should get around the Hyde Amendment. There are federal facilities in every state, including the states who are about to force women to give birth against their will. And that is the first thing out of the box from the Biden administration. Now, Biden indicated that he would make abortion medication available. He didn't really say how, he didn't really say when. Again, that's an easy fix. He should, at federal facilities, like if you can go to your CVS, you should be able to now go to your post office and get your medication because, again, there are federal facilities in every state. So Biden has a lot of power of things that he can do, even within the Hyde Amendment, to say nothing of repealing the Hyde Amendment. Biden was a 3-decade supporter of the Hyde Amendment until he ran for president for the third time. Apparently now he doesn't support the Hyde Amendment, but in last year's budget, because the Hyde Amendment has to be re-upped every budget cycle, they tried to take the Hyde Amendment out. Republicans said no, Biden caved. So maybe this time for the 2023 budget, Biden could not cave and actually repeal the Hyde Amendment, which would further unleash federal monies to and abilities to provide the services that the Supreme Court has taken away. Now, obviously, federal protections are limited. Executive branch protections are limited because the next election, who knows who's president, and those all go away. So yes, there needs to be codification of Roe by Congress, but let's not forget, and I've said this before, and I hate to be like the Debbie Downer here, but what makes people think that this radical conservative Supreme Court, which just thumbed its nose at 50 years of settled legal precedent, would allow a congressional law protecting Roe v. Wade? I'll tell you the answer. They won't. They will overturn that law before breakfast. So if you want to get serious about protecting women's rights and the rights of the LGBT community and the rights of non-believers, then you have to expand the Supreme Court. So when I hear...
So you heard all of the things that Elie said should happen by the Biden administration in protection of abortion rights. Because remember, that is the thing he's using to hit Briahna Joy Gray over the head, figuratively, about Genocide Joe, is abortion rights. So you're saying voting for Joe is going to guarantee some sort of abortion rights. Now, the things that you listed, Elie, has Joe Biden done any of those things that you say he can do in support of abortion rights? Has he done any of them? I'll wait. Because he hasn't. No. The answer to that is no. He hasn't done any of those things. So let's get this straight. The person who has all of these things, Elie, you said in his power that he can do to combat this terrible ruling by the Supreme Court, which he hasn't done, you want to make sure he's back in office, or you want us to vote, forget our conscience and say, forget the genocide participation and vote because of abortion rights that he's not even willing to go the extra mile for himself. You see the framing of this? How people, now we're all for abortion rights, but for people to pretend like voting for Democrats is somehow a feather in your abortion rights strategy is ridiculous. What are they exactly going to do? They don't have even enough people to do what they say they want to do in codifying abortion rights. They don't have 60 votes in the Senate to do that. So what they're telling you is just vote for people who virtue signal that they have the same opinions as you on abortion. Now, I wanted to show you that, and let's go back and finish out their reaction to this, because Bree responds, and then he responds. And then he responds. So you see what he says. Bree, let me scroll down, and Bree responds to this, and she says this: "Sir," I love how she says, "Sir, I'm the one with a functioning uterus. Solidarity means we stand together to ensure all our rights are protected. Throwing vulnerable groups under the bus to protect my rights is exactly how you get fascism." Meaning, throwing vulnerable groups like the Palestinians under the bus just so I can get my rights seems like is exactly how we get fascism. If you want Biden to win, you should push him to end a genocide, not berate women with the claim that you care more about reproductive rights than they do, which is a great comeback. I thought he respond. Yeah, he does respond. And then he says, "You mean this?" And it's just an article that he wrote, by the way, that says Biden's Israel Palestinian policy could cost him the election. And that's from Politico, because I covered that actual article. That's how I know that's where that's from. So you see the reaction. You see the technical ratio, but that is not at all what is cracked up to be. And there's one other thing, because he tweeted something else that he deleted. This too. And he got absolutely destroyed. This is what he says: "You know, I'm not going to tell Palestinian voters to vote for Biden. I'm really not. I won't. What I am going to do is tell white voter who couldn't find Gaza on a map 6 months ago to miss me with their work from home, slack of vision, and choose the lesser evil." So, because somebody had no idea that an apartheid was going on in occupied Palestine, and because a person who can't point to Gaza on the map, because that person can't do any of that, that person can't protest against a genocide. This is the logic from the professional managerial class. You can't point to Rwanda, then don't freaking advocate for Rwanda. You can't point to where Somalia is, then won't worry about the conflicts that's going on in Somalia. How absurd is this logic that Elie spews? And he's considered the progressive. When he is invited on shows, he is the left guy. When he comes on The View, he's the far left guy. When he goes on MSNBC, he's the far left guy. Just astonishing. And he rightfully gets dragged for this tweet. Here is Due Dissident saying, So if you're Palestinian, don't vote for the president who's murdering your people. But if you're white, shut up and vote for the president who's murdering Palestinians. This is the logic of the liberal class. That's due dissidence chiming in. And here is Margaret Kimberly. Some deleted tweets should live on, because he deleted this tweet. Yeah, he absolutely deleted this tweet. And is there another reaction? I think that's the last one. All right, that is the last one. This one right here was a funny. Now, this is a different reaction. This is not a positive reaction. This is not a positive reaction for Bree. But this is somebody, I guess, who's agreeing. Well, anyway, let me just read it. And it's kind of a bizarre tweet. It says, Marxists in disarray. Who's a Marxist? Bree is an accelerist. Bree? While Elie still adheres to harm reduction principles, this tension amongst leftists is ongoing, with accelerationism ascendant. Always leftists are the reason why the Supreme Court of the United States is going to be right-wing for 2 generations. Here's a newsflash. The Supreme Court was right-wing before that. The Supreme Court has always been right-wing. Just because the Supreme Court is divided amongst party lines on a handful of social issues, they agree on war. They agree on corporatization. They agree on corporate corruption. They agree on 97% of the rulings that they make. But I thought that was just a bizarre tweet there.